The Broncos are Super Bowl champs. Peyton Manning has won the Super Bowl once again. Von Miller is a Super Bowl MVP. Super Bowl 50 in Santa Clara was a spectacular event throughout the entire venue. From the start of the game, from the pregame, the national anthem, everything else, it was an amazing thing to see. The Denver Broncos are Super Bowl champions, so that's exciting in and of itself. We are back for another edition of the Coach's Corner podcast. Here today, we're going to talk about Super Bowl 50. We're going to talk about Cam Newton, the Denver Broncos, Johnny Manziel. We're going to analyze the best defense of all time. And Derek Favretto joins me on the Coach's Corner podcast to discuss these topics. And then we're going to cover the 2-minute warning. We're going to talk about Cam Newton and his media problems or lack thereof. We're going to talk about LeSean McCoy and his alleged bar brawl incident with off-duty police officers, and Matt Forte, breaking news out of Chicago. All that, much more, here on today's edition of the Coach's Corner podcast. This is the Coach's Corner podcast, brought to you by CodyOrk18.com. We are back here, Coach's Corner podcast, episode 13, and it is a beautiful day here in Colorado. A great lineup on store for all of you guys today. As we mentioned in the intro to the show, we're going to talk about Super Bowl 50, talk about the best defense of all time, look at Johnny Manziel, and I want to touch base on a topic of about what I perceive to believe that there is a discriminatory line of discipline between white athletes and African-American athletes. Hopefully this doesn't come out as controversial, but we'll talk about that in just a few moments. But welcome back to the Coach's Corner podcast, powered to you by UTalk Sports app, where you can tweet your voice, your thoughts to Talk Sports on Twitter. The first feature in a long time where you can actually, instead of using 140 characters, you can use a minute-long audio clip to embed inside your tweet, and there you go. You can now use your voice as a platform on Twitter instead of using 140 characters like we always have with limitations to talk sports, to analyze it, to discuss and do your own halftime show analysis or game analysis or thoughts. It's great. Sign up for it now, UTalk Sports. It's live on Android. It will go live here on the Apple Store here very soon. But it is the sponsor, the power backer, the leading fullback for the Coach's Corner podcast. Very excited to have that. Also, Dollar Shave Club. Go to dollarshaveclub.com right now. Get a clean shave, shave money, shave time, and use great products. I get it delivered to my door every single month. The best blades, the best things, the shave butter, the one wipe Charlies. Throw out the toilet paper. You don't need that no more with the one wipe Charlies. You get a clean wipe, aloe vera treatment as well. It's great. And most importantly, you get a great shave, which I'm sick and tired of, paying $25 just for a blade for a Gillette razor. So Gillette, you're in the trash. You're done. Dollar Shave Club welcomes you. So the first thing we're going to talk about here on the podcast today, we're going to recap Super Bowl 50. The Carolina Panthers taking on the Denver Broncos in, quite frankly, one of the most amazing dynamic type of Super Bowls you can think of. Obviously, it's huge. Super Bowl 50, 50 years of having the Super Bowl. I'm eager to see if I will actually still be alive 50 years from now when we have Super Bowl 100. Hopefully the game of football is still there. That's a different story. That's a different day. However, Super Bowl 50, the matchup was absolutely phenomenal. I think the whole presentation from the very beginning was amazing. At first, when Lady Gaga came on to do the national anthem, I didn't know what to expect when I heard that it was going to be her. However, it was very deceiving. Lady Gaga had one of the most absolutely beautiful national anthems that I've ever heard in my life. And in Super Bowl history, you can look at it. I think Whitney Houston, Lady Gaga, their renditions of the national anthem were moving beyond words to a point where you wanted silence in the room that you were watching it in. And it kind of, it filled your stomach, your head with butterflies, and it was absolutely exhilarating. And as a player myself, that I recall, there's nothing more powerful as a player than when you have your hand on across your chest on your heart, and the national anthem is playing, right before you're about to play. It motivates you. It provides you with so much energy, and it's very powerful. So Lady Gaga, great job. It was absolutely beautiful. And then the game kicked off. Obviously, the Denver Broncos took the first kickoff. They started out with the ball first. Carolina would get it in the second half. Peyton Manning led a decent drive to start. I think what really predicated to Denver starting off the game pretty well early on was the fact that they picked up the Carolina blitz and kind of got them out of it a little early. We saw with the double A gap blitz with Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis Sr. They stacked the box, and on one of the first plays, they both blitzed. It was an all-out blitz, and the Denver Broncos offensive line, who struggled against that kind of blitz earlier on the season and a majority of the year, did a great job picking it up, and Peyton Manning found Owen Daniels for the first play of the game for about 18-yard pickup, and then Peyton Manning had a pretty solid drive, found Andre Caldwell for a 20-plus yard gain. The run with C.J. Anderson in the first series kind of got stuffed. Pass to Ronnie Hillman got broken up, and then the Denver Broncos settled for a field goal to go up 3-0. With me, I kind of predicted this. This was my whole entire stance on this game. I was on Coach Les's show on Fox Sports in Denver, Colorado, on Caliwood Radio, and we talked about it. And to him, I said, what? I look at this game between the Denver Broncos and the Carolina Panthers more so as a defensive game. And the reason I say that is because you got the number one defense and the number two defense in Carolina, number one being Denver. The matchup, I look at the schedule the Carolina Panthers had, and I said it from the very beginning. They didn't have anybody, they didn't play against anybody that was a defense like Denver's. They didn't play personnel, pass rushers, defensive backs, or secondaries that were just like the Denver Broncos, and that was my wild card. And so I told Coach Les, I said, you know what? I envision this being a defensive game, and the team that scores first on defense will win the game. And surely enough, Cam Newton came out. Obviously, the pass was incomplete to Jericho Cotchery. They ruled it incomplete, and you go back and you look at the replay, and you can see it from both sides. However, the ball did move out, and by NFL standards, it was not a catch. So you had 3rd and 10. Cam Newton takes a snap. Von Miller comes around the edge, sacks Cam Newton, strips the ball, takes it away from him. The ball goes in the end zone. Malik Jackson, DeMarcus Ware jump on top of it. Touchdown, Denver. And you can't imagine for a better way to start for the Denver Broncos by setting the tone early, creating a consistent offensive drive, and then the defense coming out and absolutely playing dominant from the very play. So that was the story of the game. Denver sacked Cam Newton 7 times. They hit him 17 times out of those 7. It's absolutely crazy, the pressure he had. And you can tell Cam's body language, his posture after getting hit the first few times, it kind of dropped a little bit. And right before halftime, DeMarcus Ware sacked Cam Newton to end the halftime. And usually a player would run off into the locker room at that point, but Cam was slowly walking. His head was kind of down. You could tell he was defeated from that very moment. So the Denver Broncos opened up second half on defense, and it's the same thing. Obviously, Ted Ginn had a pretty big play where he got, I think, about 30 yards on a catch and run. He got pushed out of bounds. And then the Denver Broncos defense came away again, forcing a fumble on Mike Tolbert. It was absolutely amazing. I think the Denver Broncos defense played really well. To me, honestly, when I look back at it, the level of efficiency that they had against the number one ranked NFL offense in the Carolina Panthers, you look at all of that, and you can chalk it up saying that this Denver Broncos defense that played in the Super Bowl was one of the best defenses of all time in NFL history. The numbers speak for itself. Von Miller winning Super Bowl MVP, 2.5 sacks, forced fumble, 2 forced fumbles actually. It was amazing. It was amazing. And on the Carolina side, Coney Ealy had a tremendous game. He had an interception, a forced fumble, and 3 sacks. He had a really good stat line, but it just wasn't enough for the Carolina Panthers. And their defense played really well as well. It's not like the Carolina Panthers defense didn't have a good game. What I looked at this game, and the thing that I said the most was that all Peyton Manning had to do in this game, he didn't have to be the 2013 Peyton Manning. He just had to be the Peyton Manning that manages the game, that's a game manager, and makes great decisions. So what happened was, you get a 3rd and 6. The Denver Broncos would throw it short. They wouldn't try to go deep. And if they didn't get the first down, they were okay with that because Britton Colquitt, who had a who had struggles in the first half of the season. He was having a really terrible start to the year. He had a great second half of the year punting the ball, and he had a huge Super Bowl game. He punted really well, pinned Carolina back deep, and you got guys like Kayvon Webster and these guys on the outside, the gunners on special teams who played really big for these guys. And you can only imagine how much better it could have been. Obviously, if David Bruton was playing, David Bruton had a tremendous year before breaking his leg, and he still played a game after he broke his leg. He played the entire game against Pittsburgh back when they played in the regular season. So, a lot of factors there. However, I look at it, and, Peyton Manning, obviously Super Bowl champion once again. John Elway saying, this one's for Pat. That was amazing. I kind of predicted that would be a surreal feeling. And the whole Denver Broncos season and the Super Bowl ending, you can kind of categorize it as one of the most Hollywood-esque type endings possible in the game of football. It was amazing. Peyton Manning, now the hope for him is to retire as a Denver Bronco right off into the sunset, Super Bowl champion, 5-time NFL MVP, and the record holder for most of the quarterback stats in the league. Peyton Manning right off into the sunset. You owe it to yourself. You're going to be a great general manager, a coordinator, whatever you decide to be one day. If it's on a TV analyst, you're going to be great at whatever you do. So, Peyton, thank you for everything that you've done for the Denver Broncos organization. Very grateful. You're a class act. You're a tremendous guy, and truly grateful for what you've done for this team. So, after the Super Bowl win, what I did was I decided to make the drive to Denver for the championship parade. That was on Tuesday. The game was on Sunday, and they had the Super Bowl championship parade on Tuesday, so not a lot of time in between to prepare. However, it was amazing. There was literally 1 million people there. It was very peaceful. There were no arrests, no drama. Actually, one person out of 1 million got arrested. So that's a pretty great statistic right there. People called in work. So, the state of Colorado, if you're wondering where your employees were on Tuesday, they're at the parade. Once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If it happens again next year, if Denver does go back-to-back, I don't want to predict, but that would be the hope. That would be the hope that, a lot of the players have and myself, that Denver can repeat. I'll go a day early and I'll camp out. I'll camp out at a spot where it's going to be because it was phenomenal. It was absolutely crazy. The atmosphere was amazing. I've never seen so much orange, and if you guys watched on TV or you saw pictures, you saw how many people were truly there, and I don't think that picture does justice. It was a loud atmosphere. It was tremendous, and very grateful to be a part of that. So next up, after we recap Super Bowl 50, kind of want to talk about a little bit some problems that are going on in the NFL right now, and it's regarding Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football. His new name is Johnny Boozball, all right, because he's no longer going to be playing football. That's my bold prediction. Johnny Manziel's NFL career is done. It's finished. It's over as soon as he gets cut March 9th by the Cleveland Browns. This guy needs help. Seriously. And if you didn't know, a recent affidavit was released by Johnny Manziel's ex-girlfriend claiming that he hit her so hard that it ruptured her eardrum and she still can't hear from it. So when I look at all that and I look at the consistency that we've had with Johnny Manziel getting in trouble and being in the media for the wrong headlines, obviously back in college, Texas A&M, obviously taking the money against NCAA violations, the constant partying, and also this year there was already another incident with him and his girlfriend at the time early on in the year that was investigated by the NFL where they were pulled over on the side of the road arguing, police had to come, things like that. Well, recently it came to find out that she called the police on Johnny Manziel after he reportedly was using drugs, and at that point became very disruptive, saying he was going to kill himself, he was going to kill her, and he left. And so, there are police helicopters looking for him. It was a messy situation, and this affidavit that came out just only goes to prove that Johnny Manziel has a problem. His father came on ESPN and said that if nobody could get him help, he's probably not going to see his 24th birthday. When your father goes on national media saying that, and he used the word day, and a lot of people are like, well, you're his father. Well, his father tried previously to get him into rehab twice, and he denied it. He denied getting help. So, something that, you have to take into fact, you cannot make a change in your life if you're not willing to, and Johnny Manziel doesn't appear to be ready or willing to make changes in his life. Obviously, change is inevitable, and the change that will be forced upon him will either make him or break him. It's like watching Ryan Leaf unfold between our eyes all over again, So what I predict is going to happen, he's going to get cut by the Cleveland Browns. He is going to resort to using bad coping skills like using drugs, partying, and he's going to get himself in trouble or he's going to die. I hate to say that. I really hate to say that. Johnny Manziel's a talented athlete. He's a talented football player, but he's an entitled little rich kid. He's a little brat. And that's what you get when you've had your parents' money supporting you your entire life. And then combined with that, you make it to the NFL with great athletic ability, and you continue to piss away your opportunity. Something we've seen with NFL athletes all over and over and over again. It's a repetitive cycle, and Johnny Manziel's the latest guy to get involved in it. So when I look at it, is obviously, Johnny Manziel, take advice. Take the advice that players around the league are getting to you. Ryan Leaf even offered to contact you. He wanted to get in touch with you because he knows, if any guy knows what it's like, Ryan Leaf knows what you're going through. Ryan Leaf was in that position. You've got guys like Von Miller, Super Bowl MVP, who reached out to you and saying to get help. Trust me, you could be at a better place a few years from now. But at this point, it just seems like Johnny Manziel's in denial. He came out and he said, I didn't hit my girlfriend. I'm fine. I don't have a drug problem. Nothing's wrong. People who have a drug problem usually come out and say, I don't have a drug problem. Johnny Manziel, come on, man. Look yourself in the mirror and get this figured out. So, the NFL hasn't even disciplined him yet, which brings me to my next point. It does appear that the NFL has a discrimination, let's say a discretion, a huge difference in discipline when it comes to white athletes compared to African American athletes. Let's take Ray Rice's situation, for example. Obviously the difference between Johnny Manziel and Ray Rice in this situation is that there was a video of Ray Rice hitting his wife. There's not one with Johnny Manziel. However, you look at what happened originally. Roger Goodell suspended Ray Rice for 10 games in the NFL season, and then 2 hours later, he was banned permanently from the NFL, and he had to go through the whole process, with the NFL Players Association, the appeal, things like that, and he went through the court process. Ray Rice went through the court process. Him and his wife got counseling. They've now become spokespeople and advocates for domestic violence. He's done a lot to repair his image, and he deserves another chance to play in the NFL. Teams deserve to give him a shot. And then you look at Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys saga. I know earlier on in one of the previous episodes of the Coach's Corner podcast, we talked about the delusional Jerry Jones. And rumors were having, I think a few months ago, where they were trying to attempt to see if they could get Johnny Manziel if he were to be released by the Cleveland Browns or if he were to be a cap hit. The Cleveland Browns released him. Obviously, Hugh Jackson came in as a coach and said, you know what, I don't want him part of my team. He's going to be gone regardless. His career is done in Cleveland. Jerry Jones said that they'll probably pick him up in Dallas. And this is where I draw the line, because you want to look at what Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys did. We saw the pictures from what Greg Hardy did to his then fiance, the bruises, the marks, and it was absolutely sickening. It made my heart turn as someone who's seen domestic violence occur when I was a younger child. You just really can't touch on the fact that there's something wrong. Obviously the behavior, slapping clipboards out of coaches' hands, and reports saying he's not going to be back in Dallas this year because he kept partying. He always showed up late to meetings and practices and things like that. We've got a system in the NFL where players have problems and nobody says anything to them. Nobody tries to do anything to them. But when you look at guys like Josh Gordon, who he's had some substance issues with marijuana. He claims that the last test that had him suspended from the NFL for a whole year was because THC was still in his system from a month or 2 months prior when they started doing his drug testing. So obviously it came back hot, and he's got suspended. He's doing a lot better. I hope to see him back in the NFL this year. But we look at the Richie Incognito situation, using the racial slurs towards Jonathan Martin, the offensive lineman that was for the Miami Dolphins down there when they were in Miami. That whole saga was very crazy. And sure enough, with him, there was no discipline. So my thing is, when white athletes get in trouble with the law, it appears that the NFL waits longer to do something about it than when an African-American athlete gets in trouble with the law. It's apparent, and my perception, and this is just my opinion, that the NFL is quick to punish African-American athletes compared to white athletes who get in trouble with the law. And it's frustrating and it's unfair to me. And I think Roger Goodell is single-handedly ruining the game of football simply because of the fact that he's an owner who has simply no control. He has no control. He's so inconsistent with his rulings regarding discipline, regarding rule changes, and just operations in general. Is frustrating. It's sad to see. The NFL needs help. So, Roger Goodell, get your shit together. Johnny Manziel, get your shit together. Figure it out. And obviously, no, he shouldn't be playing football. Get him out of the National Football League until he can prove that he can be a well-functioning, appropriate, responsible adult in society, and as an NFL athlete and as someone who is on TV, who should be a role model to kids. However, he's not. He's the very polar opposite of what you want your kids to look up to. Figure it out, Johnny Manziel. It's only a matter of time.
You've been listening to the Coach's Corner podcast here on CodyWork18.com. Follow us on social media at Coach's Co Podcast on Twitter, and enjoy the rest of your show.
All right, we're back from commercial break here on the Coach's Corner podcast. I have a guy who I've been following on Twitter. We've had a lot of great conversations analytically about the game of football. He follows me. His name's Derek Favretto. You can follow him at Favretto on Twitter. He joins me here in just a moment on the Coach's Corner podcast. We'll get him on in just a second. Have you on?
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Obviously, you're a big Broncos fan. How does it feel post Super Bowl week that the Denver Broncos are Super Bowl champions? Has it sunk in yet for you?
It has, because I've had a lot of friends that, on Twitter and on Facebook that said, man, he has no shot. You're going to get smashed. The offense is soft. They can't keep up scoring with Carolina. Carolina blew out Arizona. I said, listen, Denver's defense is unlike any other defense that Carolina's played. And I said, if you notice, Wade Phillips, when he's able to key in on something like he did on Sunday, making Cam one-dimensional, it was brilliant. Making Cam Newton throw the ball 41 times, that isn't Carolina's football game. Not at all.
No, not at all. And certainly it's been interesting. For me, after the AFC Championship game, actually, we'll say the week of the AFC Championship game, I really couldn't tune into the media because I really couldn't handle the disrespect that the media was giving the Denver Broncos. All the analysts saying that Tom Brady and the Patriots were going to roll into Denver and absolutely demolish the Denver Broncos because the Denver Broncos hadn't played anybody, and that, now they're fully healthy. Because the first time the Denver Broncos played, all we heard as fans were, they didn't have everybody. They weren't fully healthy. They were all injured. When they're healthy in the playoffs, it's going to be a different story. And come AFC Championship game, Denver absolutely just jumped all over them. It was very exciting to see. That game was absolutely amazing to watch. And more importantly, it shut the media up. But soon after the game was over, and as soon as Carolina won against the Arizona Cardinals, we heard it in the media. Denver doesn't stand a chance. The Carolina Panthers are going to steamroll this Broncos team. And the disrespect that I heard that really kind of got me kind of mad at the point was the fact that I think it was Heath Evans. He said, this Denver team's going to get beat worse by Carolina than they did against Seattle 2 years ago in Super Bowl 48. That kind of frustrated me. But you know what? I stopped for a second and I took a step back and I thought about it. And I realized that this Denver Broncos team, they're okay with being the underdog. I felt like them being the underdog and most people not giving them a chance to win this game. I really believe that took the pressure off of Peyton Manning, the entire team actually. And as we saw in the Super Bowl, Denver came out and they played phenomenal. I had a quick question for you. Did you watch? Do you have Showtime? Do you watch Inside the NFL?
Tim's talking about remind me what the episode was about.
It was just it was a recap of the Super Bowl, and they had NFL films, each weekend inside the NFL.
No, I missed it. Yeah, the sound. I have it on PVR.
You should definitely watch that, Max. I tell you, it's phenomenal. The NFL films piece, the highlights, they do the first half highlights, and they talk a little bit, then they show the second half highlights. It's probably the highlights combined when you watch it are probably over at least maybe 25 minutes. So it tells the whole story. And from the very beginning, you get that feeling in your stomach like you did right before kickoff, the butterflies. I don't know about you, but before the game, sitting there in the pregame, just knowing that kickoff was moments away, and all you could think about was, all right, I want this team to win. Could you imagine what it's going to be like if we win? And obviously, I hope we can play to the best of our ability. And with that, as soon as Lady Gaga, who I thought, at first when she was going to do the national anthem, I didn't know what to think. But she did a phenomenal job. And I, to be honest with you, outside of Whitney Houston, I think that was one of the best national anthems at a Super Bowl I've ever heard. And it was literally exhilarating. And then moments after the Jets fly over, that moment, it really just kind of hits you. And then you're just, you're ready. The nerves, the butterflies, they go into full effect. And as soon as the ball's kicked off, man, it was great. So, a little bit what we're going to do here while I have you here. I want to kind of go over some of the topics we kind of discussed early on in the show. Obviously, we're going to recap Super Bowl 50. But I want to talk about the Denver Broncos defense and where it ranks in top defenses of all time. And we're going to talk about Von Miller's MVP and his playoff impact. We're going to talk about Johnny Manziel and his latest string of troubles in media and drama that seems to be circulating all across the press. And then kind of ask the question, we're going to ask the question if there's a discriminatory approach by the NFL in terms of discipline and how they discipline players. We'll talk about that. And then I'm eager to hear your thoughts.
Give me an example. Of what you mean by that?
Well, let's look like the Ray Rice situation. Before more details came out about the Ray Rice thing, I remember Ray Rice was really suspended for 10 games at first. And then 2 hours later, Goodell announced that he was banned. But, we look at, guys like Josh Gordon. We look at guys like Greg Hardy, for example, and he's kind of the wild card factor in this. But it seems over the years that, we can take a look back also at Richie Incognito for what he did to Jonathan Martin.
That was brutal.
And we kind of look, and I'm not much of a guy. I don't want to pull a race card or anything, but it does appear that the NFL has a different form of discipline for white players than it does its African-American athletes. Just something that I've noticed.
They do. I agree.
So we'll talk about that. But first, let's dive into Super Bowl 50. What were your keys to the game? I know I went on air with Coach Les of the Coach Les Show down in Denver, Colorado for Fox Sports, and we were talking about how do you beat this Cam Newton Panther-led offense, and more importantly to me, I just said I gave the usual with a guy like Cam Newton who can run, who's multi-dynamic, throwing the ball and run the ball, creating opportunities. I say you have to keep outside contained and you have to play press man coverage with the outside receivers, and if you do that, you're going to have a great chance to win. And I think that's exactly what we saw. We saw a little bit, and Cam Newton ended up being hit, I think, 17 times, but 7 of those were for sacks. So, that's a pretty efficient stat line for a monster defense by Wade Phillips. What did tell me?
Wade was brilliant. I mean, keeping 8 guys in the box. He wasn't able to get any sort of momentum in the run game going, forcing Cam to throw the ball, limiting his first and second down yards, and then those long third downs were key because then DeMarcus and Vaughn could tee off. And with the inside pressure from Wolf and Malik, who was outstanding, they didn't stand a chance. I think the game was over in the first quarter. You could just tell that there was not going to be if Peyton could just play a clean game. He didn't have to, morph back to 2013. If he could just play a clean game, that we would win this game.
Absolutely.
Because once you started noticing that Cam got rattled and he's on the sideline and he was pacing and he looked upset. You could just tell that Wade had gotten inside his head. And as much as he came out and he dabs and he's, handing balls to kids and smiling and laughing, I think Wade Phillips really got inside his head. And those are some keys of the game. I mean, you have man coverage with three guys that could be number ones on any team. And having Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware coming at you, I mean, I'm sure O'Hare and Remmers are still having nightmares about these guys on the outside. I mean, I can't think of a better tandem on the, coming after Cam Newton.
Well, and the conversation was the fact that, Ron Rivera saying, we played the number 2 and number 3 ranked pass rush, and we seem to do fine. So we're not gonna change anything. We're gonna do what we do. I was listening to him before the game, and he said that. But I think the atmosphere was different. As you mentioned, you kind of got the feeling like this one would be, the Broncos had it after the first quarter because. Obviously we started out on offense, so at first you're kind of wondering like, oh gosh, this offense, who's had struggles all year, who's, really hasn't had an identity. They're going up against one of the, a really great defense as well in Carolina, against Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis, Josh Norman, and, Coney, guys like that. When I look at the whole thing and I was like, okay, you have to have a good start here. And so I think what Gary Kubiak's game plan was to get them to get out of their blitz early. And we saw that. So the first couple the first couple plays, Carolina blitz, they had that double A gap blitz, which was a big struggle for Denver against, New England and Pittsburgh. It hurt them. And then Peyton Manning got sacked a few times off of the double A gap blitz. I thought the offensive line did a great job from the first play of the game, picking that up and shutting it down, and Peyton Manning found Owen Daniels for a gain of 18 yards. That kind of got a good swing to the game going. And it's not, as you mentioned, I think, Peyton Manning had to play a clean game. A lot of people were saying, Peyton Manning needs to play like he did back in 2013. I was like, no, he doesn't. All Peyton Manning really has to do this game, with this kind of defense that Denver has, all Peyton Manning has to do is be a game manager. He's just got to manage the game, and that's exactly what he did for the Denver Broncos. And we noticed, and a lot of times, at first I kind of got a little frustrated with some of the play calls. It was run, but then I kind of realized, started picking up after the first couple of series when Denver wasn't really moving the ball, when Carolina was, pretty playing solid. I realized that the game plan was, they were going to either try to pass it on first down, run it on second, depending on how, what kind of yardage it is. They're either going to run or pass. If it's 3rd and 6, they're gonna try to throw it. If it's 3rd and 4, they're gonna try to run it. One thing I noticed is that when they did that, their play calling kind of shifted to Britton Colquitt's strength, and he punted a heck of a game. A guy who struggled for a majority of the first half of the season punting the ball. Many people wanted him cut. I was one of those guys at one point. He played really well. He responded really well to, I think, a lot of criticism, and he pinned Carolina back deep, and that just helped our defense.
Twice. He pinned them twice, and he averaged almost 46 yards a punt. He looked fantastic, and as a lot of people said, they found the game kind of methodical and sort of boring. But I think with the limitations with this offense and with the line, you couldn't take a lot of chances in the passing game for fear of Manning getting sacked. And then once they finally got C.J. Anderson going, I mean, there was a little bit here, a little bit there. Once they finally got him going, I mean, they worked a bit of clock. I mean, it was only one for 14 on 3rd down, but they made key plays when they had to, and then even punting and giving the ball back to Carolina, and just give it up to the strength of his team, which for once it was the defense.
Yeah.
And Carolina had zero answers. I mean, having 7 in the box, it might as well have been 12, because Cam looked shocked every time he got hit. And their left tackle just was a turnstile. And there's nothing at all. I mean, he's a top 20 tackle for the year, but this defense played outstanding. And when you were talking about, where they rank all time, I'd have to put them top 5.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's different eras too. I mean, who did Chicago play? Who did Tampa really play when they marched away the Super Bowl? I mean, a lot of those teams didn't have Ben Roethlisberger to go up against, or Brady. And we had some tough quarterbacks to up against.
Yeah, and in the media all week, a lot of people have been saying, is this Denver Broncos defense one of the best of all time? And I touch base on your point. I think the game in 1985 was so much more different than it is in 2015, and that's evident. The style of,
definitely.
Most teams back then didn't have this kind of prolific offense that has now become a trend in the NFL with the spread option like Cam Newton and the Panthers had, or Tom Brady.
Definitely.
The offenses are different. The defenses are different. The game plans are a lot different. And a lot of people were saying the Denver Broncos defense isn't even as great as the Seattle team. So I've got a little interesting fact.
That's not true.
Here, okay? And this is kind of how it goes. So 7 of the 16 games that Denver played this year, they played a playoff team. Back in 1985 and 2013, the Bears and the Seahawks played 5 playoff teams during their season, and the Ravens played 3 playoff teams back when they had Ray Lewis and they won the Super Bowl that one year, back in right before Ray Lewis got arrested. And so this year, Denver beat 7 playoff teams, Seattle beat 4, Baltimore beat 4, and Chicago beat 6. Those defenses. And when you look at it, the Denver Broncos faced a higher scoring teams that averaged 22.8 points per game, while the Bears and the Seahawks played teams that averaged 21.5 points per game, and then the Ravens faced a team that had averaged 18 points a game. They didn't really face a really high scoring offenses at that point like Denver has. And then obviously you got to think the Ravens faced the Browns and the Bengals twice because they're division rivals, and neither of them averaged 2 touchdowns a game. And that was kind of where those offenses averaged 10 and 11 points per game. But the playoff teams, in those years, all those guys, Seattle, Baltimore and them, they all destroyed the playoff teams that they played. However, but when you look at Denver's defense in the playoffs this year, they played Ben Roethlisberger, who's had 2 Super Bowl titles. You got Tom Brady, who's won 4 Super Bowl titles. And then you played Cam Newton and the potent offense. Those 3 offenses right there between the Steelers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, New England Patriots, and the Carolina Panthers, there's 6 championships combined between those teams, and Cam Newton has 0 of them. So it's Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger. Those offenses were top in the league. They were very high scoring.
Exactly.
So you look at that, and you look at the year that Seattle played, and they had that great defense. The year they won the Super Bowl, Seattle faced 2 quarterbacks that year that had Super Bowl championships, and that was Drew Brees and Peyton Manning. And then obviously they played Colin Kaepernick, in a year where the 49ers offense was actually pretty good. Baltimore that year, they faced 0 quarterbacks who had 0 titles, so they played quarterbacks like Brian Griese, Steve McNair, Rich Gannon, and Kerry Collins. In Chicago back in...
That tells you all you need to know.
Yeah.
Those 4 names right there.
In Chicago, the 1985 Chicago Bears defense that year, the quarterbacks that they played combined for 2 titles each, and that's Phil Simms, Dieter Brock, and Tony Eason. So when we look at it, you can kind of gain the fact that the Denver Broncos are the only team out of the 4 other champions and defenses to play and beat the reigning world champions, and they did that twice in the season. Denver beat New England twice this year. One time they did it without Peyton Manning. They did it without T.J. Ward. They did it without Sylvester Williams, a lot of crucial guys. And then they beat them in the AFC Championship game to go to the Super Bowl. So I think that this Denver Broncos defense resume speaks for itself, what they did, the stats, and just based on what I just told you, it's evident that this Denver Broncos defense is probably one of the greatest of all time. It has to be, because no one's done that.
I agree. And if you go back and you think about the Chicago team, you play corner, so you understand the way they used to play corner is a lot different than it is now. You'd watch quarterbacks drape over the wide receiver, just drape over them. It's a lot different now. The penalties that are called now that lend itself to like a high-powered offensive football game. That wasn't the way football was played in the 80s and even in the 90s. It's a totally different. It's night and day. You can't even compare.
No.
If a lot of these guys were playing now, they wouldn't have jobs.
Yeah. So you'd have to. So it's safe to say, and I agree. And there are a lot of guys, and when you watch Inside the NFL, when you check out that episode, you're gonna have guys like Boomer Esiason, you're gonna have Michael Irvin, Adam Shine, and they say this defense is one of the best ever. Period. And a lot of people were trying to argue the fact that, well, look at what Seattle did to Denver back then. And I said, well, look at this. That year, Denver had the number one offense. Seattle had the number one defense. This year, Carolina had the number one offense. Denver had the number one defense. Defense does win championships. And it doesn't matter how high scoring it is. If you have a game plan to shut down, and I think Denver, kind of used a really great approach. And you could tell from the beginning. And I predicted, I was on Fox Sports radio this, before the Super Bowl, and I really looked at it, and I told Coach Les of the Coach Les show, I said, this game, I just have a feeling is going to be a defensive game. And I say the first team that scores on defense is going to win the game. And sure enough, Von Miller comes around the edge untouched, and he takes the ball away from Cam Newton, knocks him down. It goes to the end zone. Malik Jackson and DeMarcus Ware jump on it. Touchdown, Denver, up 10-0. What a way to start the game. That set the tone.
That was beautiful.
And from that moment, you saw the look on Cam Newton's face, like you said earlier, and he seemed rattled. He seemed different. And it shows on Inside the NFL right before halftime. Obviously, DeMarcus Ware sacked him with 5 seconds left in the first half, and then it went to halftime. But you saw as Cam Newton was walking to the locker room, he wasn't jogging. He wasn't heading in, like you see Peyton Manning. Even if Peyton Manning struggled, you see him run into the locker room. Cam Newton was walking. He had his head down, his body language, his posture was kind of weak. And at that point, I knew he's going to be, he's going to struggle. He's not going to have a good game. And then the Denver Broncos defense just completely came out and did it. And when you look at the Carolina Panthers scoring drive with Jonathan Stewart, you got to attest that to the boneheadedness of Aqib Talib at the time, who committed two. Yeah, one of the calls, I think, one of the penalties. I think the taunting penalty was a little bush league. I think it wasn't right. I think it should have been flagged on Corey Brown. However, the face mask, it hurt. It hurt a lot.
That was awful.
It was a very awful play.
He may get suspended for that.
Yeah. So apparently, that's what I've read. And obviously they're going to look at what the eye poke, and they're going to say, okay, this guy's got a thing of taking shots at people. So I think they're going to try to suspend him 3 games. I think it's going to be like how they did with Vontaze Burfict, who in NFL Today, the news today broke that his suspension would be upheld and he would be serving that 3-game suspension at the start of the season. But, that hurts. So you got to wonder how that goes. But Von Miller, obviously well-deserved MVP of the Super Bowl. He's a great guy, phenomenal player. He's so fast, and you can see that. And how I can attest that Carolina Panthers offensive line feared the pass rush, because how many false starts did we see from Carolina? They were rattled. They were rattled, and it was exciting to see. So a little bit about some NFL trouble, okay? Obviously around the whole media right now, sports talk radio as well, a lot of people are talking about Johnny Manziel. And the latest report that came out with Johnny Manziel was an affidavit that said that he struck his girlfriend in the ear so hard her eardrum burst. And she's now got a protective order against him. He came out saying, I didn't put my hand on her. I didn't do anything. I'm fine. Nothing's wrong. But apparently something is wrong if you have your own father coming out in the media saying you need help, or else you're probably not going to see your 24th birthday. What are your thoughts on Johnny Manziel and just the whole saga dating back to Texas A&M to now as an NFL athlete?
Well, I liked watching him. I'm actually a Sooner fan, but I saw him a little bit. I think because of his background with coming from a family with so much money, he never really had to really work for it. Had maybe just a bit of self-entitlement, and not taking this whole massive jump from the college ranks to the NFL really seriously. And reading stuff about him showing up to practice, whether it was hungover or still inebriated, that doesn't ring right with me. If it was me, if I was Cleveland, I'd cut ties. Just let him go. And as far as his father goes, I read that statement in the news, and I thought, he's not going to make his 24th birthday. He's going to need help. Well, Dad, why don't you give him some help? If he really has these deep problems that his father believes he has, I think Dad give him some help. Get his family to rally around him. and do something about it and force him to go to rehab before something really bad does happen. I mean, striking your girlfriend and popping your eardrum, that's, he can go to jail for that.
Oh, and he should be in jail already for that. Which brings me to my point, and where I'm kind of frustrated with the fine line of discrepancy between discipline between white athletes and African American athletes. We saw, obviously, what went against Ray Rice the most was that there was video evidence, but with Johnny Manziel's history of getting in trouble and having an already altercation earlier on in the season with his girlfriend on the side of a road, and they investigated that as well. When this comes out that he struck her, and, the cops had to be called, a police helicopter was looking for him because he was on drugs and saying he was going to kill himself and kill his girlfriend, which she called the cops. That's alarming, and you kind of see this trend of behavior. I don't know if a lot of it is attributed to him trying to personally, on purpose, get cut from the team. But Hugh Jackson made it clear that he does not want Johnny Manziel on his team, and I think when it comes March, when they get the cap space realigned, that they're going to cut him. But I do think that the NFL needs to do something. They can't let him play this game right now because of what's going on with him as a person. I think Johnny Manziel as a person comes first before Johnny Manziel, the football player. Obviously, he's highly controversial, what he's going through, but his father even said he tried twice to get him to go to rehab. Johnny Manziel actually went to rehab last offseason. He checked into a place, and then, just all year, the videos come out of him partying with Four Locos, when the Cleveland Browns obviously said not to. Obviously he's a kid. Everyone's defense was he's a kid. Let him be a kid. There's a difference when you're an NFL quarterback. You're making a lot of money. You can't be doing the kind of things that you're doing because you're representing a team.
Exactly.
Representing a team. You don't see guys like, Von Miller likes to party. He likes to hang out. Look at Rob Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski, I think we can look at and describe this example perfectly. The off season, when there's nothing team-oriented going on, Rob Gronkowski is partying like no other. When it comes to regular season, Rob Gronkowski does not party at all. He stops partying until the off season. So, when you look at those, discrepancies, and you kind of see the line of discipline that will happen with Richie Incognito for using racial slurs and actually bullying to a point where a player wanted to commit suicide, you look at that issue. You look at Ray Rice issue. Obviously, he got suspended at first for 10 games, and then 2 hours later was announced that he was banned from the NFL. He's been since reinstated, but no team is willing to give him a chance, especially after all he's done. He's done a lot of damage control. Him and his wife went to counseling. They went through the court process. They've become speakers and advocates for domestic violence, and I think that, that's a great step for Ray Rice. I do think he should get it one more chance. I don't know who's going to give it to him, but, you look at that, and then you look at Greg Hardy, and I think this is the thing that disturbs me the most. We knew the issues with Greg Hardy coming in the offseason. No team should sign him. And then all of a sudden, when the pictures of the physical violence and abuse that he did to that woman that was once his ex-fiance, that was disturbing. Yeah. That was disturbing to a point where I became infuriated with the NFL because he was still playing football. He paid, obviously, he paid her off. Everyone knows that he paid her off. She didn't show up to the court date in which he would have actually gotten in trouble. He probably would have been going to jail. He paid her off, but when the pictures came out, if you're Roger Goodell, you have to do something. And I honestly can't.
Well, that's the problem. It's been very, very, very. He's waffled on a lot of this stuff. He's made mistakes, tried to backtrack, create new rules. There hasn't been a standard set where players, are all on the same page. They're all following the same rules. Greg Hardy is a perfect example of a player that has been overlooked because of the premier position that he plays. If he was a third string guard on any team, he would have been cut and he would have been gone from the NFL. Because he's a pass rusher, the premier position, that's why he's still playing football. I mean, I'm sure Dallas will part ways with him, but he'll end up finding work again. And I honestly believe that, a person like that was able to manipulate the court system because of bizarre laws. I've never heard of laws where you're found guilty and then you're able to go in front of he was found guilty by a judge and then was able to go in front of a jury and she didn't show up. Is that how it worked? Or
yeah. I mean, it's a frustrating process because
Wow.
You want to look for equality. You want to look for a consistent trend of discipline. And Roger Goodell has had a history of inconsistent discipline. Well, sure enough, Jerry Jones wants to sign Johnny Manziel. I just find it kind of frustrating as a fan and an analyst sitting back and kind of watching the inconsistency that's, formed in front of our eyes. But, it's the NFL. There's got to be a lot of proposals, a lot of changes here, and you got to hope that, in Johnny Manziel's case, he gets help as a human being. I work with a lot of kids who struggle with drugs and decisions and choices, and the thing that I preach to them is you can't make a change in your life unless you're truly willing to. And right now, he's got to hit his rock bottom in order for him to finally realize he needs to get help, or it's forced upon him. And I think it's only a matter of time, to be honest with you. And that's kind of scary to say. It kind of reminds me of the Ryan Leaf situation all over again. And that was sad, and that was crazy. He's got a lot of athletic potential. We saw it. We saw it when they played the Kansas City Chiefs. He has potential. It's just sad to see athletes continue to piss away opportunity. But
I think one of the problems with Johnny, though, obviously he has some sort of drug issue and he loves to go out and party. He has no governor. It's either stop or go crazy. And another thing too, the fact that he has all this money, there's no consequences. So let's say for instance Cleveland cuts him. What really happens to him? His father is worth millions of dollars. This kid is not really in the NFL because he needs to be there. He's not in the NFL because he loves the game and wants to be a leader and be a face of a franchise. A face of a franchise doesn't do half of the things he did. And the fact that he wasn't dismissed earlier is astounding to me. It baffles my mind. And I actually feel bad for that coach losing his job, having to deal with that circus sideshow for that whole year in Cleveland. It's mind-boggling to have a franchise like that. And especially when I don't even believe he wanted to take him in the draft.
No.
I believe that was the ownership saying, this is what you're doing. That's unreal.
Before I let you go, okay, this has been highly debated. And he's been kind of coy in his interviews. He's obviously been in the media quite a lot this week doing interviews. He was on with Jimmy Fallon last night. But does Peyton Manning retire?
Can I be honest? I've been watching football for quite a long time. And we have to all realize as fans and even people who, I like to, amateur watch all 22 film. He doesn't have the skill set to play in the position anymore. It's almost like the mind is there, but the body isn't. So for him to put himself through, even if he was given an opportunity in Houston or I guess the latest rumors of Los Angeles, even if he was able to install his offense and basically, be an OC on his own, I think it would be foolish. He won a Super Bowl. This is the pinnacle. Just like John Elway did. Go out on top, right off into the sunset. I think he'd be a brilliant mind in football. I mean, he'd be a perfect GM or coordinator, but as a quarterback, he's got to take this opportunity to just know that, his body can't do it anymore. And he'll go out like a lot of athletes do, and they stay 1 year too long. I don't want to see that for him, especially, looking back over the time, just here in Denver alone, the 2013 season. Can you imagine that? And when you go to this season and then, another year, and how bad it could be. I want to see the guy go out on top. He won a Super Bowl. He played his part, especially the last couple games. My hat's off to him. I thank him for coming.
And, some people have been saying, if the Rams offer him money, he'll go play for the Rams. But if I'm Peyton Manning, and it's just from a fan's perspective, you look at what he's done. He won a Super Bowl in Indianapolis. He got to the Super Bowl, lost against the Saints. He got to the Super Bowl, lost against Seattle. And a lot of people at this point were saying, well, maybe if Peyton Manning does not win another ring, he will his legacy will take a hit. He won the Super Bowl. Again, he won Super Bowl 50, a huge Super Bowl at that. You know, you got to look at it. I think if Peyton Manning decided to stay another year and play in the NFL, I think he would hurt his legacy, to be honest with you, because what better way to go out on an amazing career? You have most of the quarterback records. You won another Super Bowl. You have a championship. No one's ever going to question your ability as a player anymore, or where you stand on the greatest of all time list. And why not just ride off into the sunset a champion in the perfect moment? That way you don't have to face any more media scrutiny from guys like Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, who said that he should retire and he should hang it up week 4 after we lost to the Chiefs. You know, so I think Peyton Manning, it should be the perfect time. Please retire. And I say that in a good way. You have an amazing career. Leave it at that. I just don't want him to become the next Brett Favre. That's one of my biggest worries. So I'm hoping he retires. And obviously we're going to have an announcement here in like the next few weeks or so before March 9th, because obviously that's when free agency begins. That's when cap space comes in. So if Peyton Manning retires, it frees up so much cap space for the Denver Broncos to start signing guys. First, importantly, signing Von Miller to a large deal, and then re-signing Brock Osweiler, and then possibly getting some other guys re-signed. But
yeah.
All righty, Derek. I appreciate you being on the Coaches Corner podcast, man. I look forward to having you on in the future, man. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Okay.
So I want to thank Derek for joining me here on the Coach's Corner podcast. Great to have his thoughts on the Super Bowl, the Johnny Manziel saga, and the greatest defenses of all time. Look forward to doing the mock drafts with Derek here in the future. But we're coming to a close on the show. But before we do that, we have the 2-minute warning. The new segment introduced on the last episode, where there's a 2-minute time frame to talk about the things going on that we didn't get a chance to really talk about in the first place. So, here we go. 2-minute warning. Here we go. So, 2-minute warning. Cam Newton, post-game after losing the Super Bowl to the Denver Broncos, gives short answers to the media after asking questions. Apparently, he overheard Chris Harris, who they placed shortly behind him, to answer questions as well. Cam Newton decided to walk out of the press conference with the media, and it just goes to show he can't handle it. He's the same guy he always has been. He's a sore loser, and he went on record actually saying, he said, "You show me a good loser, and I'll show you a loser." And I don't know if he's trying to quote Vince Lombardi for some reason. However, Cam Newton, be humble. If Russell Wilson could throw an interception on the 1-yard line in the Super Bowl last year and still give a press conference and be humble about it, you can too, my friend. Don't let it get to you too much there. All right, LeSean McCoy, wow, shady. Philadelphia. Reports came out saying that LeSean McCoy in Philadelphia was involved in an altercation in a brawl at a nightclub that involved off-duty police officers. Come on, man. Are you kidding me? Off-duty police officers, LeSean McCoy, and 3 other NFL guys who are pretty much no-names in the National Football League, assaulted these 3 off-duty police officers. One suffered from a fractured skull. The city of Philadelphia, the mayor, put LeSean McCoy on blast, and now charges are pending. An arrest warrant could be imminent at any moment with LeSean McCoy. Are you kidding me? Come on, man. Breaking news out of today, Matt Forte, out of Chicago. He announced on Instagram that he would not be returning to the Chicago Bears this year, that they told him that he could pursue free agency. So that's what Matt Forte will do. Prolific back who many teams will be vying to sign. Possible outlooks and destinations for Matt Forte could be Denver, could be New England. Some teams are really interested. Doug Martin's a free agent. He's excited. He wants to hit the jackpot, so he says. So, crazy. LeSean McCoy possibly going to jail, possible suspension. Cam Newton got to change his diaper. Matt Forte looking for a new paycheck, new place to live, new home. And that is the 2-minute warning here on the Coach Corner podcast. See you next week.
The following following episode is available for download right now on CodyWork18.com. In the right-hand corner of the Coach's Corner podcast section, click on the link and it'll take you to past and present episodes of the Coach's Corner podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at CodyWork18 and at Coach's Co Podcast. Tweet us, send us anything you want, and you may be on the show.